Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Super Crooks. So, going into the first three episodes in this show, I realized that technically this show can actually be connected to another Netflix show. I guess they're just kind of squeezing out all of the money that they can get from Jupiter's Legacy as far as using their characters and going on and placing them in a certain kind of story. And so I would say that you don't actually need to go and watch Jupiter's Legacy. They do re-explain who those people are in this show, who the superhero side of it is. And I really just find that you really don't have to know every little bit of everything to completely get the whole grasp of show. I have to kind of approach this in a different manner when we get into spoilers, because I feel like I'm not going to know every single person's name, because it was basically impossible for me to find a actual character list that tied to visual of person. So I had to be very creative when I got into the actual me trying to figure out who everyone is. Eventually I had to really kind of pay attention and kind of write down every single stitch of name that I could come up with in every per episode. So I might just have to kind of vaguely talk about certain kind of people because I won't actually have their legitimate names. So we'll get there. I'm assuming we'll get to a point where it also seems fairly easy also because a lot of the titles per episode go into names of certain things. So I'm like, oh, okay, so if they don't actually say a certain name, I could just be like, oh, well, it's Rubberball, or oh, it's Man Mountain, because they show that upon the title of the episode. So going into this, what is this show really about? Well, the first episode is to show the origin story of Johnny Bolt, who at first thinks he's going to become a hero and then transitions into realizing that maybe there's a easier way to approach this, which is to become a villain. The second and third episode are to focus on Johnny transitioning from what is to happen to him at the tail end of the first episode to showcase where he's going to go after that moment, let's just say, and go on to do a heist, which is going to possibly land him right back to where he was at the tail end of the first episode. We are to naturally assume, or we are possibly going to see both Johnny Bolt and his heist accomplices going on and fighting off this threat and then escaping. I don't know. I didn't go and watch the fourth episode because it feels like their episodes is to kind of transition us into the next episode. So it kind of feels like there's a little bit of a cliffhanger of oh, will they get out of this? Will they will they be able to work this out? What interesting thing is going to be at the end of the episode saying what? Where is this character now? Why is this character here now? And so let's go into it. Let's go into that double 5 time territory. Let's just go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about the time we do spoil this show. These first 3 episodes of season 1. So I would say that this is an interesting enough episode to go on and watch this further. It of course is to feel like it has that Tiger and Bunny kind of flavor to it, or it really just has a normal superhero approach to this. Like I would probably say that this is like maybe even like a Static Shock is Static Shock turned into a villain, like that kind of story approach of uh yeah. So it's a very fun piece. I enjoy it. Go out of your way to say that you've seen this whole entire show in one fell sitting, I'm sure, because there's only like 20 per minutes of episode. And I like to just break things down and watch like a couple of episodes and then see how people respond to it and then continue to watch more of it and see how well that goes. So, with that said, let's go into spoilers now. So, the very pilot episode is to be called Electric Boy because we have Johnny who is to decide to at first be this superhero when he is to find out he is to have power. But we'll get to that. So Johnny is to come home to be watching Utopia and Flair going and saving the day on some channel somewhere. All of a sudden, his mother is to come home telling Johnny that he needs to go to bed. And Johnny's like, it's 7 o'clock. And his mother's like, go to bed, go to bed. And then he realizes that there seems to be a man walking in that Johnny's not familiar with. And so he's like, oh, this again. Basically, meaning that this girl, this mother of Johnny's, is to basically just sleep with anybody, I guess, to have, like, she probably sleeps with whoever is, like, she sleeps with the mechanic, she sleeps with the plumber, she probably sleeps with anybody, so that way she can get out of paying any kind of things, or, because immediately when we have this, like, TV repair guy coming in, we immediately have Johnny's mother who's like, well, is there maybe another way that I can get a brand new TV? Like, and I'm just like, wow. So this girl is to basically just be loose with anybody. So Johnny goes into his room, and so Johnny's to want to like read a magazine or something like, because he's not tired. Like he wants to go and do something in his room, and so his mother is to consistently see his light on, and so she goes in there and she's like, hey, like, don't ruin this mood for me. Like, don't ruin me trying to get laid, basically. She's had a real dry spell for a long time. So Johnny is to have his light continually going off and on, off and on, off and on. And his mother keeps going in there and like slaps him around because she's like, stop doing that. And Johnny's like, I'm not even doing that. So all of a sudden, Johnny and his mother are fighting it out to have his light go off by itself. And then his mother is like, oh, well, like, so she ends up leaving. And then so Johnny is to discover that he has powers. So he's going and seeing his little toy truck, and he's telling it to turn on, and the little toy truck headlights turn on. And so he's like, oh. So he goes on and goes out of his window to see this this light at the end of the street. And so he's like, off, on, off, on. And we find out that every single light that is in this neighborhood is to turn off and on for whatever reason. So all of a sudden Johnny is to use his power far too much, and it breaks his light bulb and breaks his TV from downstairs, and all of a sudden Johnny's mother is seducing this one man, and he accidentally pre-bursts his wang, let's just say. He succumbs. Let's try and skirt around it a little bit. She's like, seriously, you came already? And he's like, yeah. So so that night is all ruined. So Johnny is to go into school the very next day and is to talk to a kid named Tommy and is like, man, I gotta tell you a story kind of thing. So Johnny is to tell Tommy that he has these abilities. Like, I guess Johnny is to easily tell his best friend, yeah, I have superpowers. I'm like, dude, shouldn't you have, like, waited? Like, I guess he figures, like, he can trust somebody with this, and I guess that's Tommy. So, so Johnny goes on to see that there's a bully that gives Johnny crap, and so Johnny's gonna deal with him in some goofy way by exploding his boombox from the inside, like meaning that Johnny is to kind of use his power to have this just off in the distance boombox explode, and then Johnny is to use his power to ring the school bell without it actually being that time. And so Tommy's like, wow, like, so you really do have superpowers. And so Tommy and Johnny go to lunch, and so he's like, "Man, you can be a superhero. You can be like the Union of Justice, which is to be like the Jupiter's legacy people, the Utopia and the Flare, the guy that they saw in the very in of course, like they like set that up in the beginning of this episode, and so." Tommy is to have drawn these superheroes and so Tommy's to draw these superheroes. Johnny is to be like, man, like you should really go and do this like professionally one day. And Tommy's like, well, yeah, like maybe I should. So Tommy is asking Johnny, it's like, well, hey, do you have any ideas of what your outfit can look like? Like, do you have any ideas of like what you can do to make yourself like to be like a superhero outfit like all those other characters do? And so Janice is going on and is to grab the paper that Tommy had drew of the Union of Justice. And so Janice is to mention that she had saw Flair, the superhero Flair, when she was in Oakland. And it's like, well, good for you. Like, who cares? No one does, Janice. Shut up, Janice. Boo hoo. Boo for you. So So Johnny goes like after this and is like, maybe I can win Janice over with my superpowers. Yeah, I don't think so. So so Tommy is trying to train Johnny on like how uh to punch and kick and fight and whatever. And weirdly, we have a Power Rangers Jungle Fury reference being put in here. And so I'm like, wait a minute, they're referencing Power Rangers in here for whatever reason? I'm like, okay, because Jungle Fury is one of the Power Rangers seasons, weirdly. And then they end up saying, like, where it's based off of. So I'm like, okay, this is interesting, but also weird. Maybe this is from whatever time. Like, they're young kids, so of course they would probably reference some Power Rangers show. Because that makes sense because they're young. So we have Tommy asking Johnny, it's like, well, hey, like, what does your costume want to look like? What do you want your costume to be eventually? And so Johnny goes and gives Tommy this really rough drawing of basically this thing that looks like Superman with like a mask and like this kind of almost like Flash like logo on his chest. And so Tommy's like, okay, well, that's a little rough. And Johnny's like, shut up. And so Tommy ends up coming up with a better design. And And Johnny is like, whoa, like, yeah, I want that. Let's come up with that somehow. So all of a sudden, Tommy is to have this, like these clothes, uh, that I guess are kind of throwaways. And so they're kind of coming up with numerous examples, for Johnny to have where he has this, like, mask kind of covering his face, but it kind of looks like the Flash weirdly. And so they keep coming up with these designs, and so Johnny just has this simple, like, Robin like mask, and then the lightning bolts off to the side, and then he has like the lightning logo on his chest. And so it's very simple, but it actually looks pretty cool when, like, it's all said and done. But people could have different opinions about that. That the Johnny Bolt costume is a little bit conservative or whatever when we actually get to that point. So Johnny and Tommy are to go off to this arcade, and we find out that Johnny doesn't even, like, he doesn't need to put quarters in the arcade. He can just go and use his power to start the machine. And I'm like, immediately when I saw this, I'm like, well, like, why doesn't Johnny just go and do that to an ATM? And hilariously enough, by the end of this episode, that's what actually Johnny does. And I'm like, dang, man, like, yeah, that's smart. Like, that's a horrible thing to do, but, like, these people are going to become villains anyways. And so, also, whenever I was to actually see, like, someone have, like, a electric superpower, it's like, well, why not just take everything from ATMs? That made a lot of sense. Like, we even had at one point where I think Clark Kent had turned evil, and he, like was emptying out, like, ATM machines or something. Or I think he, like, robbed a bank just using his superpowers. So, and of course he didn't get shot. So, anyways, pushing on. So Johnny is to again bump into his villainous nemesis, who is to be this guy who kind of has this, like, blonde mullet like thing, where it's like blonde in one part, but then black on the side, but it's like this really long stretch of, it's not really a mohawk, it's just like this mullet kind of thing because it's so long. And, like, I don't know this guy's name, this bully's name, but we have him, of course, attached to Janice. And so we just have this kind of bully making fun of these guys. Like, oh, you playing arcade games? And kind of, like, they're making fun of him. And then Janice is just like, well, yeah, like, I'm going to make fun of him too, I guess, because I kind of have to. Even though, like, Janice probably has, like, something out for Johnny. So Johnny wants to figure out how to win basically Janice over, because Johnny is going out and trying to do the whole superhero gig thing, but, like, there is nothing going on. Like, there's no crime where he's at. So there's, like, nothing he can do. So Johnny is just to practice more of his power, and is to be able to have the ability to seemingly either fly, or I would say he can kind of, like, float above the air. And so I'm like, okay, so he can technically fly or just kind of hover where he is to be at. So they come up with this master plan of getting a bunch of kids won over by Johnny, which immediately once this is first set up, I'm like, how is this going to go horribly awry? Because this is the worst. This is the worst plan for an electrical hero that has electricity as a power. So Johnny is to, or Electro Boy, is to go to this pool, an Electric Boy pool. Is anybody going to see something going wrong here? Because it will. And so Electro Boy is going to hover over this pool and to showcase his power, and all the kids are going to be like, wow, like, doesn't that look cool? Like, who is that? Is that Utopian? Is it Flare? Is it some other superhero? Who is this? And so we have Electro Boy, who is to tell everybody, hello everyone, I'm Electro Boy. And the one bully is to be coincidentally in this pool. And so this bully is to immediately say, oh, well, that's not Electro Boy. That's Johnny Bolt. He's in my class. I know him. And they're like, no, don't say his name. Don't say his real name. And so all of a sudden, Johnny, I guess, is starting to lose concentration. And so Johnny ends up going and falling into this pool. And then he electrifies every single person in this pool and kills them all off. And I'm like, oh my god! Like, he's murdered a ton of people. And, like, I guess he was gonna completely get away with that? Because he ends up, like, running off? Like, I guess they just say that it was in a, like some kind of accident of sorts. They just kind of wipe it off as that, because I guess they might have not have had any like cameras or anything like that. So now Johnny is talking with Tommy, and so Tommy's like, oh my god, that went like really bad. And so Johnny's like, you know what, like, I think I've completely given up on being a superhero. And Johnny says this while he's at this ATM. And he's like, you know what? I think I'm going to go on the other side. I'm going to go on the dark side. And I'm going to go and be a villain. And so we just see Johnny, who just uses his power to get all this money out of his ATM. He's like, yeah, I'm gone. Like, I'm going to completely escape and run away, and you guys will never find me. I'm going to get out of this town. Because that's what Johnny really wanted, is for him to escape out of here to go into a better place. So at the very end of episode 1, you just see a older Johnny Bolt who goes by the name Johnny Bolt, so he goes by his actual name, going into some like super prison or some max prison or something like that. And he is to, of course, be arrested as a much older character. So we start off on the second episode with, of course, Johnny being in this super prison. And so we have a bunch of kind of inmates kind of squawking about, and because there's new inmates coming in, and so there's this guard named Eric who's kind of making these newer inmates kind of like knowledgeable about certain other inmates that are kind of much more unsavory characters. So we find out here that Johnny Bolt is to be in prison for his last day, and he is going to get out. So Johnny Bolt, I guess, was really kind to the guards. He was really kind to the other inmates. We have some kind of rock-looking like inmate that is to mention to Johnny, it's like, well, hey, you're going to miss out on the party. Like, you're going to miss out on all this. And Johnny's like, well, hey, man, like, I got to get out of here. Like, it's too bad, though, but like, I got to go. Like, I'm going to have my own kind of party. Like, I'm going to get out of here. So it seems like the guards have to kind of check out before Johnny is to leave, like kind of what level of importance that Johnny is to really have. like if he's connected to the villain regime, I guess called the Network, or if he's just kind of some common crook of sorts, and then they can just easily let him go and not have to like really watch over him just because he's just some common crook. And so Johnny used to tell everybody, "Hey man, like I'm gonna try and like rehabilitate myself. I'm gonna go straight. Like I'm gonna be on. Like I'm like you're never gonna see me in here again," as he is to say. We'll see about that. So Johnny, of course, is to be picked up by a girl named Casey, who we find out that Casey has this power to create these illusions. And so I'm like, okay, that's interesting. So we transition to this prison having this party, and it seems that there's be this head honcho at this party is to be Mr. Matz. And so I think they end up calling him a bastard or something. And so, interestingly enough, we have the Mr. Matt story where there had been this one guy named Danny uh, Brovini, Brovini, who had gone against Mr. Matz. And so Mr. Matz's ability is that he can go and cut off a like a person's head. Like just clean off. He can just explode someone's head and kill a person. So Mr. Matz goes through and finds every single person that this guy Danny is either working for, related to, or is a friend of that he kind of casually hung around with, and murders them all. Murders every single person in this guy's life, to the point of Danny finally finding this one girl, and then Mr. Matt's going and killing this woman right in front of Danny. And Danny's like, God, like, why are you continuing to do this to me, Matts? It's like, just come after me, just kill me, just finally have this be over, finally. And so Mr. Matts doesn't do anything. Mr. Matts is to never kill this guy. So I guess that probably forces just Danny to have to work with Mr. Matz. So we also find out that the actual network, this villain regime, is actually a legitimate thing. It's not some like ghost story to like scare superheroes. Oh no, there's a whole villain corporation going on, or what is it called? Like there's a whole villain networking thing going on here. So we now transition after this whole story to have Johnny go home and spend some quality time with Casey. Quality time meaning them rushing off their clothes as quickly as possible. But then all of a sudden, Johnny is to mix it up with certain other supervillains that he has worked with before, and he's like, hey, how did you guys get in here? And it's like, we're villains, like, come on. And plus, we could easily figure out how, because we have, I think, out of the names here, I think I'm going to try to get this right, but I'm not sure if they're right. So out of these three villains, we have, of course, Transit that can go and take these characters from one location to another. So this guy is like a Nightcrawler kind of character, like the Marvel Nightcrawler character. So that's how they got easily into this place. And so we also have the guy who's wanting to come up with some heist, and I believe his name is Frostbite. or like I think Johnny Bolt ended up calling him Frosty. So, and we seem to also have Kismet, who his power, I guess, is to be dealing in bad luck. That he can go and make certain people have bad luck. And I'm like, man, that actually is like really cool. Like, I like that ability. That's kind of like a interesting thing. But you also got to wonder, like, because the way of which that this guy talks, that he also is to have bad luck himself, where it seems that he's to say in one part of this these episodes that not only did his cat, I think his cat and his like mother died on the exact same day, and so they have to justify how that happened. So So Frostbite is to come up with this heist, this jewelry heist like thing of them going and getting diamonds. I'm like, why wouldn't you come up with a heist to steal money? Like that takes like you have to get the diamonds and then come up with someone who can sell these diamonds unless there's an easy taker. But so we have Casey, who of course is to hear this scheme, and she's like, Johnny, why don't you just finally just go straight? Like, how about you finally just go on and do something that's like to be a good thing to do? And they immediately are to say, it's like, well, do you mean like the Green Cafe that you do? And so we end up having showcased a commercial of Casey going and doing this like cafe that she's throwing, uh, where it's basically like this it's like cutting, like it's like juicing grass and then giving it back to people pretty much. So uh so we push on and we have Mr. Matz going on and talking to a character called Salamander, and talking things out for whatever reason. And so and talking, I think, about the network and so on and so forth. So Johnny is going and laying next to Casey, I guess after their love making session. And so Johnny is to mention to Casey, hey, like, how about you come with us for old time's sake? Like, come on, like, it's my get out of jail free like party, you know? Like it's my getting out of jail party that we heist that we're kind of throwing. And so because Casey and her illusions could be a lot better than Kismet's bad luck, and so like because Casey had went off and used her power to make every single one of the guys drunk so that way they'll go home, so that way her and Johnny can have some alone time. So and so it's like Johnny's like, well, why can't you just use your powers? Like, why can't you just like come with me? Like, it'll be fun. So Casey is of course to refuse to go to work and like seem to kind of terrify her people that she's kind of waiting on, because she's a waiter technically. So Johnny Bolt, Transit, Kismet, and Frostbite all go off to this jewelry store, and so Frostbite goes and breaks down all of this glass, and so Kismet is to try and kind of confuse uh, all of the workers, and then Johnny and I think Transit and also Frostbite are just trying to like collect all the jewels and whatever. So they go off, collect all their loot, and so they end up driving off. And they're thinking, ha ha ha, I think we can get away with this. especially when we have like a character like Transit who can basically just kind of zap them from one place to another. Like you would think that like how far away can this Transit character really zap people? Because like in my real legitimate thoughts, you would think that this guy would be able to like zap them pretty dang far from one location to drastically another. But I guess he doesn't like it doesn't work that well. Or plus, if you have a number of people, like it probably just makes for a different or difficult thing. So all these characters are driving off in these motorcycles, and so at first we have all these like tons and tons of police all trying to stop uh, these supervillains because supposedly the place that they are in, the town that they are in, doesn't have superheroes. So now the cops are desperately trying to like call upon any superheroes that may be somewhere close in the vicinity to help them out. So what happens is that there's all these cop cars uh, surrounding them, and so Johnny uses his power to electrify every single one of these cars, killing all the cars off. And then Johnny is also creating green lights for himself so that way they can just drive without having the problem of stopping traffic or whatever. So we go through and have them easily making their way uh, through this spot here. And so all of a sudden, we have weirdly appearing some character called the Man Mountain. And so this massive, colossal character is to try and take down this threat. But really, like, we have the villains that kind of easily are to be too quick for him, or like this character like can't easily thwart this kind of threat. They have to kind of get a more specific hero for this kind of thing. We can't just get a massive man and think that this person can stop them because they're going so quickly. So we then introduce a superhero called Rubberball. Evidently, this Rubberball character can perform as some kind of like wheel of sorts. So I'm like, how is it that this character is like going so quickly, to where like he can easily drive as quickly as they are? So Frostbite tries to use his powers of freezing to kind of create their own road, and we have kind of Rubberball, who's kind of really impressed with all these supervillains' powers. But we also find out that Rubberball seems to have an affinity for, or a thing for hurting like pedestrians or even hurting other villains. To where Rubberball is to mention that he had broken the legs of one other villain, and he's like, "Hey, like when you go to like Supermax, like let him know." Let like kind of like apologize for me, I guess. So when you see that villain, so what they try to do is Johnny or Bolt is to try and use his electric power to try and take down Rubberball, but like it seems to kind of like limitly work, and so now Frostbite is to try to push them onto the roofs of these buildings, and he's trying to create these, of course, like transitional things from one rooftop to the next. And so it seems that these guys are to eventually figure out a way to neutralize Rubberball, because they're like, God, how are we going to stop this guy? And so, because Rubberball is to go and take Transit's motorcycle and destroy it, and so Transit is to go on to jump onto Bolt's motorcycle And so, because Kismet and Frostbite are kind of driving together, because we just have Frostbite in this kind of sidecar. So eventually, Johnny Bolt is to electrify uh, Rubber Ball again, finally taking him out. And so we all of a sudden have them think that they're completely in the clear, that there's no other superheroes coming along to uh, to uh, to conflict with this heist. And so like, hey man, like we made it in the clear, like yeah, we did it, yeah, this is great. So all of a sudden they are to just like, hey, what's that? And so all of a sudden they teleport to this different location, and they immediately think that it's Transit that had done it, and he's like, dude, it wasn't me. And so all of a sudden we end up seeing um, Praetorian playing with this deck of cards, and he's like, hey guys. And I'm like, oh my god. Like, so evidently Praetorian is to have this kind of like fire ability, but like I'm not quite sure exactly what all of his skills are to entail. So we'll kind of see that in the next episode, how skilled this hero is. Because when they were to look at, when the police force was to look at all the lists of all the superheroes that were to be supposedly on their way or nearby, they end up calling Praetorian in because he is to be the kind of the more complicated villain for these guys to go after. So they called him in. So we'll see how that plays out. We'll see how that goes along. So with that said, I think I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody. If there's anything I forgot about, which I don't think there is, like there might have been like a name here or two. Like I probably didn't go into the vast details about how every single villain or hero or whatever got thwarted or whatever, but like I feel like I got most of it down, right? Not to kind of like pat myself on the back or anything, but I felt like I got most of the details. So with the exclusion, maybe a name here or there, but I like this show. I want to watch more of it. Like hopefully people like this show, and then I'll definitely watch more of it. So I'm gonna get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.